Mm. Mm. Oh. Oh. Mm. Mm.
Sentry! Summon my wise men, quickly!
Hello, friends. The character portrayed in the scene you just saw was Nebuchadnezzar, king of the ancient empire of Babylon, who in 606 BC destroyed the kingdom of Judah and took the people of Israel into captivity. However, our main concern here will not be with Nebuchadnezzar, but rather with one of his Jewish captives named Daniel, who, as we know, was also one of God's holy prophets. Of all Daniel's prophecies recorded in the Bible, there is perhaps none more consoling and faith-strengthening during our own troubled times than his foretelling of a world government established by God to be ruled by him. So, in order to better understand the origins of that promise and its continuing fulfillment, let's examine more closely the circumstances of Nebuchadnezzar's disturbing dream. We read in the 2nd chapter of Daniel that the king could not even remember what it was he had dreamed, and the advisors whom he usually depended upon for such counsel were unable to help him. They claimed that there was no man on earth who could tell him what he had dreamed, much less interpret it for him. Their futility so angered Nebuchadnezzar that he ordered them all put to death. While Daniel and his people were still in captivity at the time, he was known to have visions and was respected as an interpreter of dreams. So when Daniel learned of Nebuchadnezzar's mysterious dream, he offered his services to the king, and God revealed its secret to Daniel in a night vision.
Well then, Daniel, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof?
There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the vision of thy head upon thy bed are these. Thou, O king, sawest and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. Its head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest until a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and become like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth.
Thou hast spoken truth. That was the dream, The image. Strange adornment. Its fate. But what is the meaning, canst thou say?
Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold.
I, King of Babylon, shall rule over all others.
So will it be. And after thee shall rise another kingdom, now inferior to thee, but it will rise and overthrow the kingdom of Babylon. Then there shall be another, a third kingdom of brass, which shall replace the second and bear rule over all the earth. The fourth kingdom, which shall conquer the third, shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but it shall have in it the strength of iron. And as the toes were part of iron, part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong, partly broken. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
Indeed, thy words bespeak a wondrous revelation. But is it certain?
The great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure.
Truly, your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret.
The Bible tells us that the king then made Daniel a great man in Babylon and gave him many fine gifts and important positions, which, looking back, were certainly justified. Because Daniel's interpretation of the king's dream was even more remarkable than either of them realized at the time, for it actually foretold over 2,500 years of human experience, from the time of Babylon through all the history that followed. This period, during which God's authority to rule was given to the Gentiles, is essentially what the image represents. For example, Daniel first explained that the head of the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream represented the king himself as ruler of Babylon. He said further that Babylon would be succeeded by another kingdom, illustrated by the breast and arms of silver. This, as we now know, was Medo-Persia. Then he prophesied there would be a third ruler, evidenced by the thighs of brass, which was the Grecian Empire. And finally, a fourth dynasty, the Roman Empire, depicted by the legs of iron, which Daniel said symbolized the great strength of that dynasty. But he further explained that the mixture of clay with iron in the composition of the feet and toes represented the division of the Roman Empire, which, of course, is exactly what did occur. It was divided into the various states of Europe and was never succeeded by another world empire. Finally, Daniel described how the image was destroyed by a stone from a mountain that struck its feet, and how the stone then grew until it filled the whole earth. Here is a crucial description, because it can be said that this mountain represented God's continuous authority over all these earthly kingdoms which rose and fell. while the stone taken from that mountain to smash the image, and which grew to fill the whole earth, symbolized the new authority derived from God to establish a universal kingdom on earth that would never be destroyed. This last part of the prophecy is certainly the most significant to us today. For as Daniel said, in the days of these kings, meaning during the time of the divided kingdoms or nations represented by the toes of the image, the God of heaven would establish his kingdom. This 1914 map of Europe indicates in yellow the extent of the ancient Roman Empire at its peak, and also shows the various nations which evolved after the empire fell, resulting in several prominent kingdoms which then continued for centuries until they eventually began to disintegrate in the First World War. And that's why the fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy is of such vital concern to us now, because it means that out of the continuing world chaos that began in 1914 will emerge the long-promised kingdom of the Messiah, which will be the divinely established world government for which we have been yearning when, in the Lord's Prayer, we've asked that thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is done in heaven. And once established, this government will be permanent. For as Daniel explained to Nebuchadnezzar, the Lord's kingdom, unlike all others, will be everlasting. It will have no successors, but will stand forever. There was another incident in the experiences of King Nebuchadnezzar which relates to all mankind. This involved a dream he had of a large and beautiful tree, such as we see rendered here. It seems the king had soon forgotten that he owed the greatness of his kingdom to Daniel's God. So by divine providence, he had another dream in which he saw this great tree cut down and a heavy band of brass and iron placed around the stump. Again, Nebuchadnezzar called upon his wise men to interpret the dream, and again they failed. So once more he sought the help of Daniel.
In this dream, I saw a tree which grew and was strong. Its height reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth. The leaves were fair, and the fruit much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowl of the heaven dwelt in the branches.
This tree is thou, O king, that art grown and become strong. For thy greatness is grown and reacheth unto heaven, and thy domain to the end of the earth.
Stay thy judgment, for there was more in the visions of my head. I then beheld a watcher and a holy one come down from heaven. He cried aloud, saying, hew down the tree and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth, until 7 times pass over him.
My Lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies.
Then I must know its meaning.
This is the interpretation, O king. And this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. That they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. And they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. And 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will.
The king was troubled by Daniel's words, but he did not heed their warning. Instead, he continued being absorbed by his own power and greatness. So it was that within a year, the ominous dream became reality.
King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken. The kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men. and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will.
That same hour, the punishment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from men. And he did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven. And after the 7 years of his punishment had passed, the king was glad to acknowledge the greatness of the true God. And so he was reinstated as head of the Babylonian government.
God doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand, or say unto him, What doest thou? Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride he is able to abase.
So we see how Nebuchadnezzar learned the lesson which God had prepared for him. And that lesson is one we all might profit from in order to be assured of God's eternal blessing. Because it would certainly seem there is a parallel between Nebuchadnezzar's ordeal and the experience of the entire human race. To illustrate, let's again refer to our rendering of the tree that the king described in his dream, and consider it as representing the dominion over the whole earth which God gave to our first parents when he created them. After they disobeyed his law, that dominion was lost, much as the tree itself was cut down. And they and their descendants also lost life. However, as with Nebuchadnezzar, the loss was not permanent. The root of the tree, significant of God's primary purpose, remained. And even though it was bound so it could not sprout until his divinely appointed time, God, in his love, still provided for the restoration of man's dominion and everlasting life. That provision, of course, was Jesus Christ, who became man's Redeemer. According to Jesus' own testimony, those in the kingdom age who humble themselves and recognize the authority of divine law as the governing principle of their lives will be told, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Of course, Daniel could not know in advance the detailed fulfillment of his or Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. However, through his visions, he was able to prophesy not only the establishment of the divine kingdom on earth, but also by his description, we are able to identify Jesus Christ as the ruler who would be designated by God to exercise total control over that realm. This was substantiated by Isaiah the prophet, who in foretelling Christ's birth wrote that the government would be upon his shoulder. Almost 2,000 years have passed since Jesus lived on earth. This is the period from the time of the Roman Empire to the nations of today, which are represented by the image's feet of iron mixed with clay. It has been a time when God has been preparing for rulership in the future kingdom those who have followed Christ. Because, in Daniel's prophecy, Christ's kingdom does not replace the image until the exact time God ordains. And then, as the work of this age nears completion, the stone smites the image to bring about its destruction in preparation for the righteous kingdom of Christ, which again, as Daniel foretold, will be an everlasting one that shall have no successors and will stand forever. Of course, Daniel did not realize the amount of time that would pass before the Messiah's kingdom would be established on the earth, but he did know it was inevitable, and that because of the resurrection, he would be present to witness the complete fulfillment of his prophecy. We are assured of this in the last chapter of the book of Daniel, where we are told that when God's kingdom rules the earth, those like the devoted prophet who glorified God in their life will be awakened from the dead to participate in that world government of righteousness, to be the kingdom's earthly representatives that will minister to the people. And Daniel will be among the foremost participants. For as the Lord said to him, "Go thy way, Daniel, until the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days."
But thou, Daniel, said he, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.
Even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Those are the biblical words used to describe the world situation when the time nears for the coming of the Messiah's kingdom. A great increase in knowledge, and much running back and forth over the earth. Certainly, this is an apt description of the condition in our world today. For example, throughout all the past centuries, the progress of knowledge and most forms of human endeavor was painfully slow. The same primitive methods were continued from one age to the next with little change. Then, quickly, there came enormous advances. As knowledge expanded, so too did our ability to move rapidly about the earth and beyond. Today, we are living at the crest of a relatively brief period that has produced extraordinary achievements, leading to conditions identical to those which it was prophesied would signal the nearness of God's earthly kingdom. Furthermore, in this last chapter of Daniel, we also learn that when the time approaches for the Messiah to assert his power and authority in the earth, it will be preceded by a time of trouble such as had never been seen since there was a nation. Jesus also mentioned this time of trouble, which he called a great tribulation, as one of the signs of his returning preparatory to establishing his kingdom. He described it as a distress of nations with perplexity, and warned it would be so destructive that unless these days were quickly shortened, no flesh would survive. Now, for the first time in history, it is possible to destroy the entire human race by a nuclear war. Surely, this is another of the strong evidences pointing to the imminence of Christ's kingdom. Yet Daniel reassures us that God's elect will bring these days of trouble to a close before there is total destruction. He says, "At that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be written in the book." So, we can be comforted in knowing that what the Bible calls the time of the end does not mean the end of time, but rather a period of transition that we are now living through. And when we see the significance of the events taking place all around us, we should realize that we are on the threshold of a momentous change which can be joyfully anticipated. Because the reign of sin and death, fear and hate, evil and immorality will be swept away. Then the Messiah's kingdom will come to rule over the world, bringing peace and love, righteousness and beauty, and blessing all the families of the earth with health and life. The Bible has accurately foretold the progression of the various governments through the ages up to our own troubled times, and has identified for us the nearness of the promised divine rule of God's kingdom on earth. Now, in order to bring these truths more vividly to your attention and understanding, we would like to mail you a free copy of this 96-page booklet titled God and Reason. Send today for your free copy of God and Reason. There is no obligation. It is yours free simply by sending for it.
To view the text of the literature offered in this program, please visit our website at www.dawnbible.com. Or, if you would like to receive a hard copy of the literature offered in this program by mail, please send your request by email to dawnbible@aol.com. Include the title of the literature you are requesting, along with your name and postal mailing address. The literature will be sent to you free and without obligation. And now, goodbye, and may God bless you.